30 years ago, the people of Scotland were given a chance to decide their future. But was this one of the most cynical exercises of recent times? This is a tale of government secrecy, intrigue and double-dealing, and of how the political fallout changed the course of history.
Feel when I dance with you, we move like the sea. You're all I want to know. I feel free.
In 1969, Colonel Gaddafi had seized power in Libya in a military coup. He now controlled a substantial part of the world's oil supply. In 1973, the Yom Kippur War between Israel, Egypt and Syria erupted. The Americans supplied the Israelis with arms. OPEC responded by raising the price of oil.
Remember Britain's troubles in the 70s, the strikes, the crippling OPEC prices? Britain was so broke, it had to go to the world's banker, the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF, for a loan.
We had some economic problems.
The IMF loan had its price, spending cuts, and the impact of those cuts sent shockwaves through Britain.
The opening of a new chapter in Scotland's economic history gave the Scottish nationalists an unexpected boost.
Black gold that's poured out of the North Sea has pumped billions into the Treasury's coffers. Since 1968, the oil companies have paid more than £230 billion in today's money on the oil they've extracted.
Cysonnach ei fianish yn och gymig ala benywys malach ymysg nynduchenen as biastich sa rynyorbe yanu jiava gas lion tasklan fat jeicher ichit blione.
Large revenues and balance of payments gains would indeed accrue to a Scottish government in the event of independence. The country would tend to be in chronic surplus to a quite embarrassing degree, and its currency would become the hardest in Europe. The Scottish pound would be seen as a good hedge against inflation and devaluation, and the Scottish banks could expect to find themselves inundated with a speculative inflow of foreign funds.
In March 1973, the SNP felt confident enough to take on Labour in their safe seat of Dundee East.
Dundee Harbour has become a base for North Sea oil rig supply ships. Most candidates believe Scotland should get a share of the profits.
Their growing profile raised the possibility that one day they might even achieve independence and wrest control of the oil from London. It was a future scenario which attracted the attention of some powerful vested interests. In 1974, the US State Department appointed one of its most distinguished diplomats to Edinburgh as consul, Richard Funkhauser.
He was very literate, very handsome man. He looked like sort of James Stewart, and of course he was an oil professional.
But the arrival of the senior diplomat and what exactly he was there for caused some confusion.
And the American Consul General was negotiating. I never knew the detail of it, but negotiating in some way, I think, with the Scottish nationalists.
There were rumours that he might have been with the CIA, which of course is the natural view of people in those days when governments were being brought down by that organisation throughout the world.
Whatever Funkhauser's brief, he listened to all sides. During an earlier visit to Whitehall in 1973, he had a meeting with a high-ranking Foreign Office official who warned him that the Scottish nationalists were a very serious threat. But the man from Washington was not swayed by Whitehall's hard line. He adopted the pragmatic approach that one day the nationalists may well be in control of the oil.
Onze program show has je nog kijkt naar een charmant en kahre MI5 en special branch kan klaagkijk le Westminster hadden blionigin ges meiligerid en ges kranianever immers nationdag na halappe. Een repolis genegen het dorst brosnacher gen nationtig hoke ges bommigin spreeg en ges het dorst stuus spray voert en gijf.
fechtlen polissen en dreten, son als hoeveel ille figalappen, fijn oorstaan van realters, wie leven met roetse bij wat de vechtken, vind ik al het nasendag.
Behoorlijk, Shishobech, zo wat, behoorlijk, zoerig om alle honden te doen. Kom het zo ja, chantier.
Maar misschien ik er al een policeman, vecht polish, het al nooit. Natuurlijk wat het jaren aan het doen.
Scabipto kujunjani belakis heb ik herapichu. Zo'n groeien kerapig jano, agus noorshan feestige waarschijnlijk polis. Kaderheid kanjeri stevig agus gedragheid kasset na nooie noorshan gebeurt na guiltig agus toch aan je met al per gansniks per wie je kan balje.
There were those in the civil service who took a rather different view of this from what they would normally do of political issues, because they felt that they had to work for the maintenance of the integrity of the United Kingdom.
Tron y líntsin y galaf ha berig upon tweed am neic y diag trifichet y siacdig van bale yrís y cri stri ach an thurise van strig y janef le siarfysint yn care ofys na dwchan yn cain. Fad er son y chriach fare yd ar alabe ag y sasyn chyd chynyer hwaf o berig siach chynyer. Ysgrifig chwn y ffriad ar y Callahan hwrt rwyner yn y dwchan yn cain Anthony Crossland nach siesig y chriach fare y fawn dal chynyer hyr berig upon tweed risgrwdig yd ar nasianta. Liana gysbolwch gymig at y tost brosnachwch go selected opinion formers gysgrifig mynd yn jaraf rwd ag ys ffysrach ag ysgeilig ym ys cool feingerins na Comonton. Hwg siarafysint yn cahar y Crossland corlig gan y ffriafere.
However the dividing line was drawn, it would give England a considerable area of what are now Scottish waters. It might also have the effect of putting into English waters a certain amount and possibly even a great deal of oil.
Information Division has sought for a long time in briefing to undermine SNP claims to North Sea oil. In the process, it has played on the Shetland-Orkney uncertainty as well as the uncertainty about the angle of any dividing line between England and a hypothetically independent Scotland. Indeed, Hagrasho, it is part of my standard sales patter.
Polling day opened. Both Labour and the Scottish Nationalists were supposed to be campaigning for the same goal.
The Labour Party in Dundee made no attempt whatsoever to get out their vote. And the same was true of many other parts of the country. They didn't fight for it. They didn't believe in it. They didn't want it.
And there was still the issue of the Cunningham Amendment. 40% of the registered electorate had to vote in favour.
Well, the referendum was arguably conducted on an electoral roll that was substantially out of date.
When you actually looked at that in detail, the dead voted no. You know, because every electoral register dies about 1% a month. So the dead counted no. Anyone who had been placed on the register, like some of the American students in Edinburgh, for example, the halls of residence, they counted no.
Number of yes votes, 1,230,937. Number of no votes, 1,153,502.
In spite of the majority in favour of an assembly, the terms of George Cunningham's 40% amendment meant not enough had voted in favour.
It was fundamentally undemocratic. Why, they asked, is first past the post good enough for Westminster elections? Why was it good enough for the referendum on the EEC? Why was it good enough for those measures, but not good enough for Scotland?
Cysonnach ei fionish yn och gymig ala benywys malach ymysg nynduchanen as biastig sa rynyorbe yanu giava gas lion tasklan fart jeicher ichit blione.
It is hard to see any conclusion other than to allow Scotland to have that part of the continental shelf which would have been hers if she had been independent all along.
Margaret Thatcher swept to power in the general election of May 1979. For the next 11 years, a committed Unionist Prime Minister would be in power.
The money from the oil off Scotland's coast bankrolled Thatcherism. The revenue from the North Sea allowed Margaret Thatcher to reverse the economic policies of the 70s. She believed in the free market, so she even sold off Britain's national oil company.
North Sea oil increased the value of the pound and increased the exchange rate. The city rejoiced as foreign capital flooded in and boosted the financial services sector. But there was a downside.
Margaret Thatcher used that money to restructure the economy. But in Scotland, not everyone agreed with the way she spent the North Sea oil revenues.
Throughout the 1980s, there was escalating industrial unrest in Scotland as unions fought to keep jobs. Massive unemployment followed. Money that at one time was earmarked to boost industry was used to deal with the consequences of its disappearance.
Looking back on it now, you can say a large part of the oil revenues were actually used to pay for the unemployment that was created in the early 1980s. And that's not really what one would have liked to see if you look at it objectively. If there had been a special fund for North Sea oil, it could have financed all sorts of important things in Britain's infrastructure, which could have been important for economic development.
Not only did we have an unsympathetic Prime Minister who was wiping out our industry, but she was using money from Scotland's oil.
North Sea oil revenues could be used for the improvement of the North and South Circular roads to motorway standards and to build an outer ring road. Building of the proposed Channel Tunnel might be reconsidered.
The notion that North Sea oil revenues could be used for the improvement of the North and South Circular roads may well appeal to the commuting civil servant, but it would be political suicide for any government that was anxious to retain seats in Scotland.
What it brought home to us was that no matter what political decision was taken north of the border, it didn't matter unless it coincided with the decision taken south of the border.
Hashin your nochgig mar ha jiver real to sin harish in the blionlichen gach kwak edachke chlachgig is fuse mi chlachgig gus alape chamal ons nunig. Had er wie kur mile fuse of sabotage it immersed in fein really agus no ishmalach. As in kujokter hostem follash pepper in the realtus a geishe.
Mar a chai Nepalish a chur rhyper a haiger tashbani yn logel agos shihal yn SNP yn actually shirich 4 acre. Mar a chai mian da villian alapanoch y iwltach gyn eistio chorst gan iwltas achge son fein rieldig. Mar a rhain polis gan agent bros noch ygyr dyniog agos spray yn hianif agos mar a hwgad stu spray ffwad an gaif. Agus mar a chai fysrach y gynnwch gymig alapa yn misg yn dwchen yn ysbiastich sy'r ryniorpe a chamal giafar agus y glasig ans na tasglain.
Finisimi y gyfer Jew democracy. Stoch y gyr a drygori gynnach oer y gyr pan i enw fer cwl gnwych gys mael y chydyr ymwysg politicoch a dda logal agus ymwch i gylior. Ach ond fi around ych y cwysysym. As yn y cwywyr jarach gyfer peperin agus ffeilichen y fa dyn sy'n cynnal giafar yn nisht fi ylbyn agus gymwring yn yw barach dy ffyrin y cwysig hostum ffollash.
North Sea oil could have far-reaching consequences for Scottish membership of the EEC because of the tremendously increased political power it would confer as the major producer of oil in Western Europe. Scotland would be in a key position, and other countries would be extremely foolish if they did not seek to do all they could to accommodate Scottish interests. This paper has shown that the advent of North Sea oil has completely overturned the traditional economic arguments used against Scottish nationalism. For the first time since the Act of Union was passed, it can now be credibly argued that Scotland's economic advantage lies in its repeal.
North Sea oil runs out very slowly, whereas the flow of cash from the city can run out just like that.
As you probably know, the Scottish government here, the SNP government, would very much like to get its hands on the oil revenues, but argues that there should be an oil fund.
They're absolutely right. And what to me is so upsetting, so striking, be even more striking, upsetting if I were a citizen of the UK, is that, in a sense, you squandered that wealth and you mistook the success of the Thatcher era as a success based on good economic policy, when it was really a success based on living off of your wealth and leaving future generations impoverished.
This party will campaign full square for independence in the coming referendum.